Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Listen with Vobes. Got it right again. On the right channel, I mean. Hello to everybody. Lovely to see you out there. And thank you very much for joining me on this cold and wet in some places. We're going to get the rain very shortly down here in Worthing. And I've lit the fire in the front room and the Hissey is ready to go. As soon as I finish today's show, I shall be lighting the blue touch paper and getting the fire lit in the kitchen so that I can cook something and also warm up the house and the hot water. So just checking everything's all working and what have you. I think we're there. I think you can see and hear me, which is good. Hello to the lovely Julia, to Tall Podge, Billabong O'Neill, thank you for coming. Turbo Stream, Justine Jones. Who else have we got there? Days of Yore, or Dave of Yore, nice to see you. Nigel Sadler, hello. John F, nice to see you, sir. And Lee Lawson, we're all together again. Anyway, thank you very much for the nice comments about today's video, by the way, which is on my sister's station. Very kind. Yes, that came out very nice. It took a lot of putting together, seeing as I churn them out. So if anybody's got any ideas or things that you can point me to as I make my journey around the county, please do, because I don't have a huge amount of time, as you can imagine, to do all the research. It's not so much the research, it's knowing that these places are there and then finding them. Anyway, Ben Reeve, hello. He says, my colleague in Slough is in Tier 3, but the houses at the end of his garden are in Tier 2. That's bizarre. He'd be better off moving into a caravan in their garden, wouldn't he? So he can say, I'm in Tier 2. And here's a question for you. I hadn't thought about this. Maybe save this for the Vogue show. But if you're right on the border of Tier 1 and Tier 2, wherever that happens to be, and you live in Tier 2... No, you live in Tier 3. Presumably you can walk to the gym that might be open in Tier 2. Oh, no, wait a minute. Is gyms open everywhere? I can't remember. Or to the pub in Tier 2, or wherever it is. The things that are closed in Tier 3 that are open in Tier 2, can you walk from, just down the street into the next tier and utilise those things? Presumably, who would know? Who's going to stop you? Anyway. Let's carry on. So we're reading on Sovereign English Roads. We are, how much are we? We are just over a third of the way through, and we are continuing on chapter 9, I think this is. Or is it? I can't remember now. Chapter 8, I think, to chapter... Oh, I may have got that wrong on the thing. Oh, there's a picture of a windmill coming up, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, yeah, we are on chapter 9, heading up towards chapter 10. Grand. The Green Man is here. Hello, Green Man, sir. And Audrey Forbes, nice to see you. And James Poulton, thank you also. No travelling between 3 to 2. What, no travelling? That's balmy. I mean, if you're at the end of the road and, well, let's say the corner shop is just at the end of your road, but it's in Tier 2 and in Tier 3 it's shut. So, surely you could do that. Who's going to know? Michael White, hello to you. Nigel Sadler says, the boundary between East Sussex and Kent runs straight through the middle of Groombridge, near Tunbridge Wells. That must be a right pain for them then. Something to talk about in the Vogue show tonight. A nice heated argument, that's good. But not here, for we are in the world of literacy, and mostly illiterate from me. But we will do our best. We left him, I believe, at Old Place, didn't we? Which was that lovely, large, medieval-looking country mansion. A little below Old Place, the pleasant village of Lindfield ends at a spot where a branch of the Sussex Ouse is crossed by an old stone bridge. Just above this is an old watermill that makes a pretty picture, and we spend a short time in making a sketch of it, and a long time in chatting with the worthy miller, and owner. From what we gathered from our conversation, he showed us all over the mill and took a great deal of trouble to explain the working thereof. His father, he said, had a windmill, much emphasis being placed on the word wind, but he preferred a watermill, for you never know when the wind will blow, and oftentimes his father had to be up all night to make up for the lost time on account of a breezeless day. That's true, actually. That is what happened to many a windmill, a windmill miller. You mayn't hardly credit it, sir, but in the summer-time it seems somehow to blow mostly o' nights and be quiet o' days. You see, a man who has to make his living out of a windmill has to consider the weather a good deal, and I think he gets to know more about it than anyone else. Now, with water power, you may run a little shorter times, but you can generally manage to do your work by daylight and get rest to nights. Now, sir, take my advice. Never go in for milling. Should you, I beg your pardon, sir, should you ever go in for milling, you mind and go for water. And we promised him, sorry, change my accent back. We promised him, it's like changing into a suit of clothes when you do this, isn't it? And quick change, bing, take off that beard. We promised him that we would. And who shall say that one does not pick up such marvellous miscellaneous information during the even progress of a driving tour? It's amazing what you pick up. Then we returned to Cookfield by another road, leaving Haywards Heath on the high ground above us to the left. Thence we drove on through a hilly wooded country with nothing of special interest to attract our attention by the way, through the landscape or either hand, with nothing of special interest to attract our attention on the way, though the landscape on either hand abounded in great natural beauty of a restful order. But we had seen enough to interest us during the day's rovings, and were almost glad that a quiet stretch of country were passing by, with nothing exciting about it, so that we could indulge in the luxury of a little daydreaming. I've already remarked upon the difficulty of pronouncing Sussex names aright from their spelling. Thus, Cookfield is called locally Cookfield, as opposed to Cuckfield, as it's spelt. And we found afterwards the name of the town spelt in the latter way in an ancient engraving of the place. Possibly, therefore, it is the way of the spelling Sussex names that have changed, whilst the old pronunciation remains unaltered. So it was on leaving Cookfield when we asked the right road to the town of Slowham. I think it's pronounced Slowham. You see, there you are. You see, it's got here Slorham, but I think it's Slowham. Slapham. Is it Slapham? What? Hang on, coming up. So, anyway, we asked the right road out of the town to Slowham. We failed to make ourselves readily understood. I've never heard of any place of that name aboot here, replied the man. Then after a pause he exclaimed, maybe it's Slapham you means. We accepted the correction gratefully. It was something to be in a position of asking our way further on, with the possibility of being, what? Hang on, sorry, I'm reading too fast, that's the trouble. It was something. We accepted the correction gratefully. It was something to be in the position of asking our way farther on, with the possibility of being comprehended. Yes, it's a long way of saying what he was trying to say. It was a glorious morning, the one on which we left Cookfield. It's got me at it now. Great white clouds shaded with tenderest grey was slowly sailing across the light blue sky overhead. A delightfully azure blue, not the deep, dark ultramarine of Italy, which, in my opinion, is not half so ethereal or beautiful, though by some strange perversity British poets persist in singing its praises. Curiously enough, it has been left for American writers to discover the loveliness that lies in the soft blue of English skies. Great, surely, is the fascination of the far away. We were bound that day for a short stage to Horsham, by way of Slapham or Slowham. What have we got? What have we got? Staffham says Slaffham. Slaffham, says Lee Lawson. Is that how it's pronounced? Slaffham. Our road at first led us along a high ridge of ground with the wide views to the right over the wealth of Sussex woodlands, bounded by rounded hills and alternately brightened by gleams of sunshine and raked by grey cloud shadows. The play of light and shade gave a feeling of restful motion, for there was movement without any disturbing sound. Linda Kane is here, and she's late, by the way. Staple Field was the first place we came to on the road, a picturesque hamlet scattered irregularly around a wide bit of rough green, though not too rough for village cricket, we noticed. What a delightful feature in rural life are these Sussex commons, mostly of ample size, and what perfect playgrounds they make for the cotters' youngsters. How they contrast with the crowded, dusty or muddy streets and narrow slums that a working man's children of our large cities have to play in. Would that every hamlet had its green. The strength and wealth of a nation lies in its health, and these commons are helpful to produce a sturdy race. Our way now became a narrow lane with high hedges at the sides that provokingly shut out the view. Then, in a short time, we reached the village of Slaffham, where we pulled up at the Old White Horse with the object of starting forth on foot to see and possibly sketch the ruins of Slaffham Place, once the stately abode of the coverts. The landlord of the inn kindly pointed out the way, but strongly recommended us first to inspect the church, of which he had the key, and forthwith went to get it. Now, it is, to me at any rate, a somewhat rare experience to be pressed to go to church by a licensed victualler, so rare indeed that I felt it would be ungracious to refuse such a novel invitation, although it was not for worship that he desired us to go, but for curiosity. At least he told us that was the reason why people visited the building on weekdays. The church proved interesting on account of the brasses and tombs to various members of the covert family therein. I don't know whether it's covert or covert. A brass now fixed to the wall. Covert sounds, like a secret family, doesn't it? Maybe it's covert. A brass now fixed on the wall represents a knight in armour with his head resting upon a tilting helmet. This bears the date of 1506. Another, and a very curious brass of 1547, is to be a Richard Covert and his 3 wives. In this, Richard Covert is shown as standing up in his coffin, gazing at the figure of our Lord rising from his sepulchre, but the chief monument is a stately one of carved stone. That gives evidence of having been the work of a skilful Italian sculpture, with the kneeling figure of one of the male coverts and apparently his 2 wives, 7 sons and 7 daughters. This monument simply has the initials of the family inscribed upon it with the date 1579. What, however, chiefly interested us in this fine monument was not the sculptured figures, interesting though they were on account of the manifestly correct, careful and artistic rendering of the picturesque dresses of the period, but the 3 ancient helmets of the coverts hanging on iron brackets above the tomb, 2 of them still having the family crest, a leopard's head, on the top. The helmets were further adorned with modern cobwebs, and we noticed a solitary gauntlet keeping them armoured company, rusting and half-rusted away. I am no relic worshipper, but I like to see these old helmets and that one grim, worn gauntlet. They seemed suddenly to bridge over the centuries gone and to make the past more real. Yes, very good. Has Richard got hiccups, or is it my laptop? Have I got hiccups? Is it buffering? Mine is stuttering as well. Buffering. I've noticed that too. Oh, yes, it is. It's buffering at my end. Just let me make an adjustment here on the stream. Let's have a look. I'm going to make a quick adjustment because we don't want any of that. Where is the keyboard gone? This will mar your... I'm going to do another little adjustment. I'm doing a couple of adjustments here. Where's the... The picture might be a bit fuzzy, but hopefully how is that? Is that any better? It might take a few moments to make some difference. I still seem to have this error message that comes up that says, please use a keyframe frequency of 4 seconds or less. Oh no, it's still buffering. And it doesn't make the blind bit of difference. I've followed advice and it still keeps coming up. I don't know how to make that less or whatever. I can see myself making the adjustment, so I don't know if it's doing any better. It might be my internet connection. Sounds like auto Yorkshireman mode when the becomes t. I'm just waiting to see if it makes any. I've still got the error message. It never goes away. Just keep an eye on it and let me know if although buffering. Oh yeah. Can you still get the audio? If you're getting the audio, at least that's something. But if it's buffering, then that... Oh, I'm doing a Norman Collier, am I? I'm just waiting really to see if you can tell me before. Well, there's no point me carrying on really if it's going to be buffering, because you just miss the flow and timbre of the piece. In the meantime, here's the test card. You know, you won't know if it's buffering, will you? It seems better now. Thank you, Tool Podge. God, I thought I would have to wait for ages. I didn't think anybody was actually watching. Right. Apologies if you're watching this after the event. This is because it's a live thing, and sometimes these bloody things happen. But I've lowered the bit rate and fiddled with it a bit. So hopefully, I don't normally have a problem. Seems better now. No, I think it's my end going up. It was buffering. It was buffering for me too on the feedback loop that I get. So Dave says set it to 2. I've set it to 2. I set it to 2, and the error message. Sorry, we will get back to this, but just so you see what I'm seeing. You see there, please use this, and I do set it to 2, and you can see I'm well behind there. In fact, I wonder if I can I might as well just pause that. That might help a bit. I've set it to nothing at the moment because it didn't make any difference. Anyway, you don't want to know all that. That's just technical. That's technical. The only thing is I can't now, without that giving me any feedback, I can't tell you whether it's buffering or not, so you'll have to tell me. Right. We will carry on and hope. Bloody live buffering things. The church... Oh, wait a minute. Did I read all that? Yes, I did read all that. Yes, it suddenly seemed it read it. Wandering round the old church, we noticed an old jar securely built into a niche, apparently made to receive it, on the vestry wall. This jar, or urn, doubtless has a history, had we been able to fathom it. Also, on the floor there, an ancient iron monument chest. As we were about leaving the building, we observed hanging on the inside wall of the tower and close to the porch what struck us as a very gruesome notice board, being nothing less than a careful plan of the churchyard with all the grave spaces shown and the names plainly written upon them of the people buried there. Somehow this would suggest to us a plan of seats of some theatre. So small a step is there in life from the serious to the gay, just as some quaint or punning epitaph seems to rob death for the moment of half its terror and all its solemnity. I can't see that having a map of the grave area is what did he call it? A gruesome thing? A gruesome thing. Dave says seems all right now, and he's put a question mark. Yeah, well, I don't know what to do with that. That error message, it comes and it never goes. So what do you do? I could try putting the number 1 in there and see if that makes any difference. Anyway, let's not worry about it now if it's working. It was a pleasant change, interesting though the interior of the church was, to get outside into the bright and cheerful sunshine once more. The ancient church showed from its exterior something of its long life's history, not only in its weather-stained walls and changeful architecture, but also from its varied roofing. The steeple was of oak shingles that had taken on them. The steeple was that of oak shingles that had taken on themselves a soft silvery tint, very delightful to the eye. Other portions of the building were covered with thin slabs of stone, also toned a mellow grey with age and wear of weather. Then there were the red tiles, and alas, blue slates, the ugliest roofing material in the world, I verily believe, always expecting that the most abominable invention, artistically considered, of modern times, corrugated iron. Excepting, of course, corrugated iron. It's funny, I like slate. I don't understand why he has a problem with slate. It's very oldie-worldy. I mean, I know it's 100 years ago, but even so, slate's lovely. We used to have slate on my house, but not anymore, unfortunately. Anyway, that is that. What do we got here? Nigel Sadler. Where is he? I was rudely interrupted by a phone call. He's at Slaffham. At the moment, he's in Slaffham Church. Amongst the tombs in the churchyard, we noticed a monument to Catherine, sister of Vice Admiral Horatio Lord Nelson, KB. What does KB stand for? Anybody know? A pleasant footpath from the churchyard that led across some fresh green meadows took us to the ruins of Slaffham Place, which were plainly visible in a wooded valley below, as well as a large sheet of sunlit water nearby. Oh, Slaffham Place. Let's have a look at that. Of course, I don't know if it's buffering or doing anything because I've paused the feedback thing. But we'll have a look at Slaffham Place. I'm sure I'm not saying that right, but anyway. Slowham. Oh, it was the first thing that came up. Slowham Place, an outdoor wedding garden. Oh, yeah. Bloody weddings, eh? Who wants weddings at these things? But that's all the pictures we're going to get. Some of them more dramatic than others. Here, have a look. That's very nice, isn't it? Is that, presumably that's an architectural garden feature, or is that the walls of the house up to the doors? Oh yes, maybe that's, wow, look at those arches. Gosh, they've got bad feet. Oh, and the stone arches are pretty grim as well. Let's have a look. What other pictures? Is that all there is? Some other bits. Come on, I want to see more photos, please, of... There doesn't seem to be much more. Does that give us a bit of better prospect? So you've got those arches that people are... Oh, yeah, we get a vague idea of the size there. Quite a big old country pile, I imagine, back in its day. Horace Batchelor. Oh, is that what KB? Night Bachelor. Dave of yours says Horace Batchelor. I don't know where that comes from. I like the bit of slate. I like a bit of slate, says Tebracine. I like slate and corrugated iron. Yeah, you see the distance in time. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to show you that bit. I lost myself again. Right, so that's what they look like. It was a pleasant prospect we looked down upon, a ready-made picture such as an artist might have composed. A happy combination of grey ruins, leafy woods and gently sloping hills, enlivened by the sparkle of tranquil water. A peaceful prospect, too, with nothing but the songs of birds to break upon its old-world serenity. An American gentleman once remarked to me, "I would give anything if we could have a genuine old ruined abbey or feudal castle on our side of the Atlantic, with a regular history and the usual crop of crusted traditions," he said in a very dodgy accent. Even ruins have a value, as the managers of the railway that convey tourists to Tintern and other ancient abbeys and castles full well know. Many a good inn lives and prospers on a ruin. Why, when we arrived at our hotel at Arundel, our first greeting was, "It's straight up to the hill." Oh, I don't know why I'm doing him in a sort of pseudo-American. "It's straight up to the hill to the castle keep, sir." As though we had come there especially to see that and nothing else. And that we must needs see at once. In very truth, it seemed to us that the boots was struck at our perfect indifference, and our innocent remark that we supposed the keep would be there the next morning. Unless an earthquake should knock it down meanwhile. The Boots, of course, is the name of the bootman, I suppose. We dislike old historic ruins being turned into peep shows and besieged by tripper-hunted crowds who, but too effectively, put a stop to all quiet romancing. That's the irony, isn't it? That is the irony of any of it. Is you go for a nice quiet walk, you're encouraged, go and walk on the downs, go and see some art or whatever. And you want to see all these things on your own. Otherwise, somehow walking on the downs in that that valley with all the lovely trees and the stream or whatever it is, and the chalk face and Neolithic man running around, it's all very romantic and beautiful and nice when you're on your own and serene and beautiful and artistic and romantic and all those things. But if there's somebody else there, a couple of blokes in some lurid what's this stuff they wear? Not 9X, latex. What is it they wear? That modern lycra, whatever it is. The colourful, neoprene and all of that. Walking their dogs, it just kills it. Stone dead. Why people walk in any of that horrible clothing, I do not know. Why can't they get themselves a nice piece of proper wool, a bit of, not necessarily a branded name like Harris Tweed, but a nice bit of proper good, decent cloth. That's what they need instead of all this awful modern junk. Anyway, Knight's Companion, says Edward Moulding. A big ruin like Cowdray on the 1900 map. Thank you, Nigel. The ruins of Slafford Place, though extensive and full of interest, are fortunately not far famed, nor in the route of the travelling crowd, for they happily stand in a remote valley, well away from the tripper-bringing railway. The great extent of the ruins attests the former magnificence of the old home by the coverts. The mansion proper is surrounded by 3 acres of ground, which in its turn was bounded by defensive walls with a tower at each corner. Round about the foot of the walls ran a deep wide moat, thus forming a well-fortified residence, fitted to resist a sudden attack, if not a regular siege. That's interesting, isn't it, that you would have that in Sussex? At what time period are they talking about? Because, I mean, they wouldn't have slung it up during the English Civil War. I mean, you can understand, or if it was back in the Norman period. So it must have come from a Norman period, because why else would they have an attack or anything? Or unless it's just for romantic, pseudo thing. And because people didn't attack things. There's only certain periods of time when you would build a house that would be defensive, actually defensive. So that's quite interesting. So it's probably got a deeper history than he thinks. And what would be the other thing? It went through my mind then, but it's gone. It'll come back to me at some point. It's a notable fact that this house should be so constructed when such precautions for safety were really no longer needed. Oh yeah, there we are, just as I was saying. Sorry about that. Because I was thinking, yes, you could understand if you were on the border between, say, Britain and England and Scotland, or Scotland and Wales, England and Wales in the marches, you could understand that. Dudley says, it's a look. Spandex. Oh, it's a look. Yes, spandex. Who goes about in spandex? And slacks. Does anybody still wear slacks? Do you remember that? Dudley Sawyer, it's a look. It's a terrible look, if you ask me. But anyway, there we are. It's noticeable that this house should be so constructed when such precautions for safety were no longer needful. The architect, thereof manifestly could not escape wholly from the past traditions, and thus old forms linger on what have long survived their functions, as witness in a modified degree the church towers that are still built with battlements surrounding them, a relic of the ancient feudal keep, and properly pertaining thereto, but scarcely suitable, or in harmony with, a purely peaceful edifice. Every Englishman's house is his castle. At any rate, their architect must have been imbued with that idea, and upon that he appears to have modelled his building. So there we are. My bit of deduction there was totally unnecessary, because it came in the text anyway. Just read the words, Phobes. Read the sodding words. Slough Place is now in so ruinous a state that even an approximate conception of the original plan of the house can only be guessed at. The crumbling archways, pillars and windows that remain show that the mansion was in the Renaissance classical style, so greatly in vogue amongst the wealthy families of the period. The Coverts were, at that time, the greatest landlords between London and the Channel, and it was their proud boast that they could ride all the way from Southwark to the sea on their own possessions. It's not their own possessions, is it? It's not their own possessions. Who owns the land? I've got a great book by Marion. Oh, what's her name? Marion so-and-so. This land is our land. Great book. Tells you who owns the land and how they got it and why it isn't really theirs. Although what you can do about it is whistle in the wind. Doubtless they had determined to be in the prevailing fashion, and, like many other powerful and influential families, to build for themselves and their descendants a stately home worthy to rank with the finest in the land. But alas for the vanity of human ambitions. This is a bit of a moralising now thrown in, and maybe skipped, he says, in brackets. Hardly had the grand mansion been finished, or the freshness of the new masonry toned down, before the family became extinct, notwithstanding the number of sons that appear from the monument inscriptions in the church above to have been born to it. Yeah, just goes to show. Crimpolene, drip dry, oh my God. Gore-Tex is the modern fabric of the outdoor type. Oh, Gore-Tex, gory, gormless, grimful. Give me a nice piece of cloth. None of that modern man-made crap. I want the stuff that's been grown on the sheep. So there we are. You can have all the money in the world, build yourself a big, F-off mansion and have all the land to go with it. But at the end of the day, we are all mortal. Though classical in style, with a foreign satelliteness, that's a word, isn't it? With a foreign satelliteness, this old home shows undoubted signs that the coverts would not be bound in all details to lordly Italian traditions, for in the place of the usual decorative scroll work pertaining thereto, we found that the friezes, spandrels, and above the arches and the keystones were adorned with numerous shields, each charged with the armorial bearings of the coverts, and of the coverts or coverts impaling those of their many families. Why would you impale your family, with whom they had allied themselves in all the boast of heraldry and the pomp of power? I didn't read that terribly wrong. Nigel Sadler says it's a late 16th century to early 17th century walled enclosure which forms the site of a former garden which surrounded a 16th century house demolished in the mid-18th century, the ruins of which now form the part of the garden landscape. Sloughan Place was in possession of the Covert family by 1495, Richard Covert owning an iron furnace at Sloughan until his death until 1579. That's interesting because 1495, perhaps that's when the moat was there. And perhaps back in those days you had the moat to stop your animals escaping from the pound. And then as it developed, I'm theorising here, I'm speculating, I'm making it up. I've been reading too much Philip Mercer, but maybe that's when the moat was there, and then things adapt. They knocked it down and said, that's no good, but we'll keep that. We'll stick some Renaissance towers on the corners. That'll look nice. It'll be lovely. The Normans stole the land and made sure it was kept in the family. Yes, there we are. Michael White's got it. And Billabong says, still waxed cotton here. We'll catch up eventually. Yes, there we go. A bit of waxed cotton. That'll keep you going. Cotton picking, waxing trousers. Right, where the hell did I get to? The ruins are now overgrown with ivy, brambles, nettles and weeds that luxuriate within the ancient courts and encumber the roofless chambers. Sheep and pigs wander in and out of them as they will. All is given over to desolation and decay. Leaving the ruins, we wandered towards the sheet of water we had observed from above, passing on our way an ancient mill, with its wheel gone and roof falling in, quite in harmony with the surroundings. There was a note of sadness all around, and we were not sorry to return to the dog cart and to Slapham village. That at least, if not lively, was living. The village is a very pretty one. The houses are mostly old and some are quaint. The landlady of the inn, who greeted us on our return, informed us that artists sometimes found their way to the place on painting bent. Do you mean on a painting bent, but on painting bent? She also informed us that it was the longest parish in Sussex, stretching away as far as Crawley, 8 miles off. She appeared quite proud of this unique distinction. As we were departing, the landlord once more made his appearance on the scene, and we jokingly remarked that we hoped the church was well filled on Sundays by people who did not come there out of curiosity. "Well, sir," responded he with a smile that might have meant much or little, "it were properly crowded one Sunday when Mr. Gladstone, who was staying at a house in the neighbourhood, came to church there." I assume That is Gladstone, who was what, the Prime Minister? That is the end of chapter 9. We are on chapter 10. Woo! I thought we were getting up to this. Oh, there's a windmill. We're coming up to it. But first, Ben Reeve. Oh, the moat looks decorative than defensive to me. Right. How can you tell after if they've mucked about with it? It may have been a defence. Well, not so much defensive. It may have just been there to keep the animals out or to stop their animals from getting out, rather than defensive. And then it may have been decorative when they no longer did that. That was the point I was trying to make. But who am I to say? I am not a brain. Ben Reeve says that John Entwistle of The Who said, I reason he bought the Cornwood, his country mansion, was it kept him grounded, as it had 13 toilets, and replenishing the loo roll reminded him of his paper round as a kid. Yeah, that keeps you grounded. 13 toilets when 12 just isn't enough, says Justine Jones. Sounds a bit like That sounds a bit like a COVID family. Yes, there we are, the COVID family. The Swiss COVID family, Robinson. Anyway. Chapter 10, ladies and gentlemen. We move forward. The country between Slugham and Horsham is exceedingly picturesque. We should have a bell on here. Ding! Every time he says picturesque. With a tender wilderness peculiar to the south of England, a tenderness that makes even the ruggedness of Dartmoor seem more beautiful than savage. In about half a mile, we came to a gorse-clad common, ablaze with a gold glory, and all the air was sweetly scented with the peculiar perfume of the gorse flower. At the farther end of the common was a large hammer pond, surrounded by shady woods of beech and pine. Excepting these frequent ponds, the Sussex Iron Age seems to have left behind it hardly a noticeable trace in the landscape. There are a number of old cinder heaps, truly, but so overgrown with grass, brambles, and trees as in no manner to assert themselves to the eye. These artificial sheets of water, formed for driving the wheels of the forging mills, wholly artificial and natural ponds, so enlarged as in some cases to approach the size of a small lake, have now lost all appearance of being handmade and scattered about the country, and therefore scattered about the country, and give it a special character. A mile or two farther on, we came to another and larger sheet of tree grit water, marked on our map by the unromantic name of Orkin's Pond. Presumably someone of that name was an ironmaster here. On the top of the first rise beyond this, we had a charming distant view of Horsham, the roof trees of the houses just peeping above the surrounding woods, and the tapering steeple of its ancient church, St. Mary's that would be, rising upwards from the little town. It looked like a cathedral city in miniature. To the right of us, as we passed by the wild wooded waste known as St. Leonard's Forest, which, according to tradition, used to be haunted by a dreadful dragon or serpent, as well as a headless horseman, we were the terror of all travellers in that. These dragons and things, they were the terror of all travellers in these parts, and as late even as the 17th century, people could be found to attest on oath that they had seen them. Likewise, there is a local tradition still stoutly maintained that within the forest adders never sting, nor nightingales sing. I have often noticed that the virtue of rhyming things seems strangely to impress the rural mind, as though on this account they must needs be gospel true. A 16th century authority, one Dr. Andrew Board, to wit, writing at the time, declares that he was assured by a credible person that the nightingale will sing round about St. Leonard's Forest, but never within the precinct thereof. To account for this fact, if fact it be, tradition has it that St. Leonard was disturbed at his devotions in a cell within the forest by the singing of the nightingales, and that thereupon, saint-like of course, he cursed them, and from that time to this they have fled the district. "You cursed birds! I am attending to my cell, my devotions to the Lord, and you cursed nightingales will go, oh, from this space, go." Just like that. There is actually extant a very, very old piece of YouTube footage which has him doing that. Somebody with a very early camera phone, I believe, took it. That's true, that is true. I believe that there are certain parts of the country that appear to be avoided by the nightingale, the reason for which has caused much dispute between learned ornithologists. Whether St. Leonard's Forest be one of them or not, I cannot say. My faith in old world traditions was rudely shaken in my early youth by being impressed with the statement that a certain gloomy tarn was fathomless, which was readily to be fathomed by a rope and a stone. Still, the darksome tarn overhung with huge rugged rocks, with its black blue waters, looked so weird that I almost resented the unpoetical action of the matter-of-fact friend who would test the truth of the tradition. Now, tradition is like a bit of a delicate old blue eggshell china. A very pretty thing, but it won't stand rough handling. Neither will I, to be honest with you. Horsham calls itself the capital of the Weald. Struck us as a very pleasant little town, clean and prosperous looking. I lived in Horsham from 5 years old to 18. Thank you very much. I thank you. I deserve a medal. A bandstand in the wide main street or square, without a band the evening we were there. Yeah, there was never a bloody band when I was there, I can tell you that. Surrounded by flower beds, gave the ancient market town something of the look of a watering place, and I must say, seemed quite out of harmony with its surroundings. In fact, there are, or used to be in Horsham, those stone water troughs. However, times are changed, and we with them, and in many respects for the best. I don't know about that, mate. For on this spot, till early in the present century, bull baiting was practised. Well, that's true. The sport was stopped by the Puritans when in power, as Macaulay cynically and unjustly remarks, with a greater fondness for the antithesis than truth, not because it gave pain to the bull, but because it gave pleasure to the spectators. About 3 miles from Horsham is Field Place, where Shelley was born. This can be reached by a pleasant footpath across the fields, and by almost as a pleasant road. The house has been much modernised and altered during the present century. Over the fireplace, here in the chamber where Shelley first saw the light of day, is, or was, the following inscription. Percy, I never know how you pronounce his middle name. Bashy? Is it Bishy? Bishy? I've never heard anybody else called Bishy. Percy Bishy Shelley was born in this chamber August 14th, 1792. Shrine of the drawing, speech and thought. Shrine of dawning speech and thought of Shelley sacred be. To all who bow where time has brought, gifts to eternity. From Horsham we decided to drive first to Stenning and then along under the north side of the Downs to Storrington, sleeping at the latter remote and railless spot provided there was a suitable inn, which information we trusted to be obtained from the landlord or an ostler at Stenning. Interesting to know where they went in this locality. I am beginning to like this way of reading out loud, says Dudley. I'm beginning to, like this way of reading out loud. I know I'm not a brilliant reader, but I love reading out loud. And often when there's nobody in the house, I read out loud rather than read silently. It's slower and you see the words and you take it in better, I think. Because when you read silently, I'm much faster and I skip a lot and I go, what was that paragraph? I've just read a whole paragraph. I've no idea what I've just read. Buffering, says Nigel Sadler. No, not too bad. It's beginning. We did a BE walk nearly 2 years ago, says Nigel Sadler. I don't know what he's referring to now. No. Is it still buffering? Maybe I should end. Maybe we should end here because he's just about to get into a nice little bit of countryside and what have you, and we're going to see a nice picture, but we can save it for tomorrow. I'm going to restart my router and see if that does it. We're pretty much, Lee Lawson says, and I lived in Horsham for 6 years old to 18. Oh yeah, well one less year than me. It was interesting times living in Horsham. So I'll end now because of the issues with buffering. Cheers, everybody. Hopefully tomorrow we won't have that issue. Oh, I can see. Yes, buffering. I'm reading there ages ago. So thank you very much for joining me. If you can hear me, this is the verbs calling the people. Can you receive me? Over. And I will catch up with you tomorrow. Thank you very much for coming, and sorry about the buffering. I do apologise for that, but fascinating. We're into home territory for me and many of the viewers, I'm sure. But for others, we could be anywhere. We could be on the moon. Bish, bush. What does that mean? Bish and bush. Anyway, take care. Thanks for watching. The comments are ages behind now, so I'm going to finish off. Thank you for watching, and I will... Why do you keep saying bish? What does that mean? Bish. Waiting for an answer is like... Oh, is that how you pronounce his middle name? Oh, golly, that was ages ago. Shelley Hewell Bennett. Yes, I was in... Golly, you're well behind. I was in a Shelley when it was on the telly. I was in an episode of Shelley with Hewell Bennett. He was a nice bloke. I don't know if he's still alive, is he? Anyway, I am going. I'm going. So I couldn't understand why you kept talking about bish. I thought, what is this? Bish, bash, bosh? But yeah, because you're so far behind. Anyway, I'm going to leave this running so you can catch up. But I'm going to say arrivederci. Have a good afternoon. I'm going to go and restart my router now and see if that will make the difference. Take care. Thanks very much. Bye for now. Bye-bye.